G'day, Michael here. Boy, the ongoing saga with this Geeetech. Let's sharpen any better. Alright, I just simply haven't been able to get the performance I've been wanting out of this machine. And the last video I made showed a significant step forward, but I kept hitting a ceiling and also had a problem that it actually had stalled after about 3 hours of printing in one job, and of course that means you lose a lot of material and a lot of time. And it happened a couple of times, so I abandoned that design and I've moved on and basically thrown away quite a number of what parts I could buy. I've made my own heat break and I've redesigned the hot end, everything back from the actual melt tip. So I'm using as the final melt area, a volcano tip. It's a 30 watt element. I'm printing PETG. This part is not quite 200 millimeters long. It's about 180 millimeters long. And there's 4 of them. Now, proof of the pudding is always in the eating. I don't count the millimeters per second as the that you ask for in the slicer. But if you look at this, it's doing about 180 millimeters. Just 1, 2. Okay, so I'll do that again. I'll do a count on the next part. It's probably really doing about 90 millimeters a second from one end to the other. I'd say that'd be about right. About 2 seconds for the pass. I mean, you could clock it and be more accurate than that, but that's sort of roughly what is transpiring here in the real world. Now, when you consider there's a curve involved, which also involves acceleration and processing time for the Arduino, if you have a straight line, it's very different to if you have something with a bit of curve in it. The speeds people request do not translate to actual motion of the tip. You can see people wind the speed up. Oh, it does 150 millimeters a second, and you look at the actual clocked time for a given motion, and they very rarely do better than about half that. So it's a bit like when you drive through the mountains. You may do 80 kilometers an hour in some of the straights and so forth, but your effective speed might only be 35 kilometers an hour because you have to decelerate on corners. Same sort of thing with the printing. Nothing different. It's all about what you can physically do. In any case, I've modified. We should get more lighting here. I've modified this feeder, which was designed to have the actual hot end here. What I found with all those designs, there's quite a few drawbacks. This was designed to be on the actual x-axis, going backwards and forwards. So they do their best to chop down any weight that doesn't have to be there, and then they try and cool them. And you've got, like normally, the hot end immediately below them, and you've got a heat sink and a fan. But no design, either anything I jammied up myself or off the shelf, seemed to do the job of when you're trying to really get some throughput out of the printer. So I've abandoned that and switched to a Bowden style arrangement. Inside this box, which I 3D printed, there's a typical, where are we? Want to get one of these out of the drawer. One of these guys, oops, that's the right way around. So basically one of these is inside there with a volcano on it. But what I did was I bored out the center and made my own heat break, unlike this one here. And I've arranged the Teflon very differently to what's common with these things. As a result, I seem to have had a very reliable print here, and you can see the speed's really speaking for itself. We're at the 9.1 millimeter Z mark. It's been out of 57 minutes. Let's compare that to the Black Widow, and you can see the speed difference is enormous here. Okay, let's see its progress. Now, I've wound that down to 71%, and that's because the hot end was actually failing to keep the heat at this speed. So I had to back off the speed a little bit so that the machine didn't, basically call it thermal no, it's heating fail is the error I get. And where are we? 7.8 millimeters, and it's been at it for 2 hours and 16 minutes at a 1 hour 20-minute head start on the cruiser. Okay, so the same wattage of element. One's got the sort of combination feeder and hot end, and the other thing is the heat brake is one of the off-the-shelf heat brakes. Now what I suspect's happening is too much of the heat from the printhead is actually sent back up into the cooling element. So the heat brake isn't efficient enough at stopping heat going from the hot end, or from the actual tip, to the cooling. So a lot is lost that way. And also the fan on this one is very specifically cooling the back end only. It is not cooling the tip at all. On this design, it's cooling very randomly the whole area. So it's actually taking heat away from the actual hot end. So I found that very interesting. They've got the same wattage of element. They're basically essentially a typical cruiser style Cartesian. That's actually got a stronger feeder motor. Oh, and the other thing is this guy's printing PLA, which is easy to get through the printer than PETG normally. But really this thing's thumping out at least twice what the Black Widow can. And I'm working with weaker inferior parts. This feeder does not have a reduction gearbox. It is a direct drive off the motor, so there's only so much pressure I can get out of this thing. I'm running PETG. They're both using 30 watt elements. It's crazy the difference in speed. So I know what I have to do, and that is make all my own parts to this design, and maybe I'll even tweak this a little bit when I've had more time to understand all the ins and outs. The other thing that I've done here is I've made it so you can service the blessed thing. Here, to take out the whole cooling and hot end arrangement, I need to undo one screw, this one here, and then I can slide out the whole assembly. Whereas before I had to pull apart all sorts of screws left, right and centre, dismantle the fan and the feeder arrangement just to get the hot end out. Here I can just undo one screw, slide the part out and service any parts that need servicing. But the way I've designed it also, there's no parts inside that actually need servicing, which is a bit of an irony. It's easy to service and I don't need to service anything. There's a whole lot of junctions in the typical off-the-shelf designs. There are 0 junctions other than the actual brass hot end to the Teflon tube. There are no other interfaces. So there are no little places for filament to get jammed and buckle up. And you can see the filament here is just trapped every now and again in some of these parts. And I'm over extruding to get really good interlayer adhesion, and you can hear and see every now and again. Oh geez, the lighting's bad. Might turn off the backlighting, give me a second. Okay, so hopefully that lighting works a bit more favourable. When this thing's printing in certain areas where the over extrusion is kind of trapped by surrounding perimeters, it will jump like it did just then. As in the stepper motor fails to feed kind of thing. So that's my kind of insurance policy against overfeeding. That's one advantage of having a direct drive. It doesn't overforce the bowdens. Okay, so considering I've got less force available to me, the same wattage available to me, I'm melting a harder to melt material, and I'm getting more than twice the actual output from this machine. I've got to be happy with that. I think I'm going to be calling it done now. I don't think I'll be fiddling anymore. All it has to do is be reliable, so proof of the pudding will be in the eating when I've done quite a few more prints. But yeah, I'm thrilled with this outcome. Well, I guess that's it from me. Feel free to like, share, subscribe, ask a question, leave a comment. Bye for now.